Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to have you joining us for this live website optimization and joining two incredible nonprofits just like you who have bravely entered this room so that we as a team and as a group can look at what they're doing, how they're fundraising, and help them optimize that approach. As means of introduction, my name is Artie Coolidge. I'm a vice president of client services here at Next After, and I've been here for over 3 years. But before coming here, I worked at three national nonprofits, organizations like you with the same kind of challenges, the bandwidth hurdles, the limited resources, all of that, living day to day in the trench and just asking myself, how do I activate more donors to join us in this cause? How do I get more subscribers to join our emails? And together, how do we unleash more generosity? And I cannot wait for us to do all three of those things through our time together today. Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here as well. I'm Kyle Hill. I'm a digital strategist here at Next After. And similar to Artie, my first 10 years in the nonprofit space was as a nonprofit executive for a small organization, small team, limited resources, and had to be really scrappy with figuring out what works when it comes to digital fundraising. So I'm really excited to be here with a few different organizations, looking at their web pages, applying a lot of what we've learned together as an organization to see how we can unlock generosity with these two donation pages. So as we get started here, we have two friends that have submitted their webpage that we're going to take a look at. Why don't you guys introduce yourself with your name, what organization you serve with, and why this page? Why are we looking at this page today?
Thank you. My name is John Newman. I work with Mal Warwick Donor Digital. This is my client, Channel 13, which is a local PBS station in New York City. I've been with Mal Warwick Donor Digital for 6 years. And we submitted this page because we recently transitioned to a new donation platform. In my 6 years working with 13, this is the first time we've been able to edit the page and make changes because this transition has been coming for a long, long, long time. So basically, when we started this page, we were like, we're going to make it as bare bones and simple as possible. And we don't know what our next step is. And so we're looking to you guys to help us find the next step. And I brought along my friend Brian, who shouldered almost all the responsibility of making this transition happen. So he can introduce himself too.
Hi, I'm Brian. I am an account executive here at Mal Warwick Donor Digital as well. Like John said, I oversaw the implementation and migration of our client to Every Action. And I think for a little bit of context, yesterday we heard that their previous donation form platform had been with them for roughly 20 years. And their forms, I think, kind of match that same 2000s vibe, right? Very clunky. And at this point, like the donation form, like John said, is minimal, but more clean and a little more modern.
Perfect. That's great context, guys. Thank you so much. Because as I look at this page, I see a very clean experience for the user. There's some high impact text here, but there's not a lot, so I like that we're now starting with kind of a baseline and we can explore where do we build from here to really bring in the donor to experience what Channel 13 does. So as I take a look at this page, and those of you following along on the stream here, feel free to jump into the conversation in the comments. We'd love to hear your questions. And if you have specific questions, we can get to those a little later on. But as we take a look here, one thing that I really like, the first thing that jumped out to me is I looked at this header navigation up top. We all read web pages same way that we read a book. We read left to right, we read top to bottom. And so as we scan with our eyes, we want to make sure that we're optimizing each of those main segments for how we read. So starting at the top top left is where our eyes are going to be drawn to immediately. And right away, I'm anchored on this page by the identity of the organization. So no matter if I'm coming directly to this page from typing in the URL, or I'm coming through from an email link or an ad on social media, I'm reminded immediately of where I'm at. So I love that right away. As you read left to right, and as you scan across this top here all the way to the right, there's nothing, which I also think for this specific page is the right call. Normally on a web page, you want to have your anchor call to action here in this upper right. I love to see like those big contrasting buttons with your main call to action there, but this is your main call to action. They are already there. You want them to get onto this donation page. So you want to remove those extra navigation links and calls to action, so you keep them here, keep their attention where you want it, not give them an excuse to leave this page. So already with some of the UX, the user experience here, this is really, really good. And then, like you pointed out, this is a pretty minimally designed page, which means that users' focus is going to be exactly where you point it. There's not a whole lot of anything else calling for their attention. There's a little bit of text, image, and the donation form, which I think is a great starting point for where we want to go today. Just scroll down a little bit here. And one of the things I'm noticing that I also really like is that you have the differentiation right up top between monthly and one time. And as you click between those, the amounts actually change. And so it's probably a new feature, I'm guessing, from the old forms to the new ones. But being able to differentiate between both of those and change the amounts is huge, because you're probably not going to want to, off the bat, ask somebody to give a $75 a month donation. Maybe for your organization, that does make sense. But I do like here that we're highlighting different amounts for a monthly gift versus a one-time. So that's huge. A couple other things that I really like about this page too is as you get ready to make that final click to say donate, you're reminded this is a secure form. And this doesn't have to be super fancy. And even here, it's just really a line of text and a tiny little image of a padlock reminding people this is secure. They're going to treat my credit card information with the utmost care, so I don't have to worry about my number being stolen or anything like that. So that just a vote of confidence right away as you click that button. And then other votes of confidence, you have some of these, Better Business Bureau and Charity Navigator emblems here at the bottom to remind your donor that you're not just throwing up a website to grab a credit card. Like, you are involved in the community. You've been vetted by these organizations, and at least in some way. Again, it's just another vote of confidence for your donor. So all good things. All good things so far. And as I was looking at this page just a little bit, I was reminded of two experiments that we've run that I think would really help take this page to the next level. The first one here is an experiment that we ran with CBN. So CBN is a Christian media ministry. And for this specific experiment, we were running a test on value proposition. If you're have been around Next After at all, you probably hear us talk about value proposition a lot. And if you're brand new, what we mean by value proposition is asking the question, if I'm your ideal donor, why should I give to you instead of another organization or give to anywhere at all? So value proposition is what helps anchor your donor in your mission and draw them in. So for CBN, for this test, we actually ran two different variants. This is a three-way test. For our control here, you can see that on the homepage, there's this great image, this very captivating image, a simple text, sharing the love of Christ around the world, give now. You see a similar experience here on the mobile. So that's the control. That's where we're started with. For this first treatment that we wanted to test, we changed just a little bit of the text. So the user experience is essentially the same. Visuals remain unchanged. Just changing that headline to say, your gift right now will reach people with humanitarian aid and the gospel of Jesus. You see how that's just like a little bit more clear. It's a little bit more appealing. draws you in just a tiny bit more because it gives you just enough information to make that decision. And then for this last treatment, we decided to go all in. We wanted to put a lot of text and really clarify that value proposition. So you can see there's a slightly reworded headline and a block of text right under that before you see that Give Now button. So there's a lot of words on this page. And you can see on the desktop version, it can be a little hard to read even because there's a lot of text here. And so much text, in fact, that the mobile version, we decided to remove the image entirely to really just focus on those words. So these are three pretty different treatments, all along the same messaging. And if you look at our first treatment compared to the control down here, we saw about 60% increase on our clicks. That click-through rate rose with a 95% level of confidence. So we can know this is statistically significant. This did actually make a difference for our visitors here. So adding a little bit of value proposition to the control increased people's willingness to click through. So we were seeing right here, value proposition is important. But how important? Did we take it too far by adding so many words to that web page? So if we compare now our second treatment to our control, there's a 111% increase in our click rate here at a 99.9% level of confidence. So from here, this great learning that we've been able to apply in a lot of places is you can give people more text, you can give them more words, even if at the sacrifice a little bit of a really clean design, but it's those words that are going to compel people to make that donation, to get them interested, to say, yes, I believe my gift is going to make an impact. So I also pulled another experiment. It's very similar to that. This is from Oregon Public Broadcasting, an NPR station out in Oregon. And for this test, this is an email, not on a website, but it also speaks to the importance of value proposition. So I want to bring both of these back to your webpage here in just a second. But for this experiment, the main thing that we wanted to test was the order of the value proposition. So both of these things that are included here are value proposition. This first bullet point here in the control is entering early for a giveaway. You click that link, you can enter your information, and then you're entered in a giveaway. Awesome. I'm going to get something really cool if I give my email and sign up for this. The second thing is increasing your monthly contribution to this organization to further the mission. Awesome. Also really good. Also really important. The treatment, a little bit different copy here, but the big change is flipping the order. So instead of leading with that giveaway and then asking for an increase in the monthly contribution, it swaps it. So you're leading with increasing your contribution, furthering the mission of the organization, and then the cherry on top is entering that giveaway. If we look here, there's a 25% increase in the number of conversions, number of donations on that treatment that put the mission-driven value proposition first ahead of the giveaway. And this, again, is at a 99.4% level of confidence. So we know this is statistically significant enough to make a legitimate difference. Now, I pulled this one specifically because as I looked at this page, a lot of what you have up here at the top is that same mentality of the giveaway that was in that previous experiment. There's a lot of things here that you give a gift and here's all the benefits that you're going to get. Here's a lot of really cool things that you're going to receive as a donor. And all of those are great. Like we should keep those on this page, but leading with the value that the donation will have for furthering the mission of Channel 13, I think is going to be more effective. It's a great place to start testing here. It's a way to tell the visitor to this page, your potential donor, to say, you're going to give some of your hard-earned money away. What's it actually going to do? Like, cool, I'm going to get some member benefits that I'm probably going to enjoy, but I could go spend my money somewhere else and get something in return and also have some joy from that. But this is different. A donation is not just what am I getting out of it. A donation is participating in a change that I want to see in the world. And that does not have a price tag on it. So leading with what problem are you solving for the world and how can your donor participate in that first, and then highlighting those additional benefits as that cherry on top, I think will be a great place to increase the conversions and the engagement that you're going to see on this page. So I just shared a bunch of data and ideas. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback first. What are some of your initial thoughts on leaning in that direction for testing?
Well, the first thing that I'm questioning is the CBN test that you ran with the huge block of text. I'm just thinking from like a donation page usability standpoint that if we make this long text, it'll pull a lot of the form beneath the scroll. Mm-hmm. And I'm worried that we're going to have a lot of abandonment if folks are just like reading more text and got to get off that page before they make the gift. Because the kind of general idea that we usually push is the less text on the donation page, the better, because they're already here to make a gift.
That's a great question and something that I think about a lot. The more friction that you put in place on a page, the more obstacles you put in place on a page before somebody gets to that primary donation form or your call to action, intuitively, we're going to say, well, like they have to jump over a lot of hurdles. Obviously, they're not going to jump over the hurdles. They're going to get out of here. What we've seen, though, in a lot of our testing, and the CBN example, I think is a good one that leads us in this direction, is that sometimes friction on a page helps. It actually helps increase value because it forces people to slow down and remind them why they're here. They could click through an email and you've beautifully laid out the value proposition for a donation. And they may be really convinced and they may click, yes, I want to give now. And they get to this page and they only see a donation form. Obviously there's a little more here than that, but if they only see the donation form, we have a very short attention span, especially when we're online, and we might forget, why are we here? Why did I click on this in the first place? Maybe it takes a second longer to load than I wanted to. And if I come back to it, I've lost interest already. Adding a little bit of friction, even if it pushes the donation form below the fold as it loads, that can be a huge help because you're anchoring people in why they're here, reminding them of their contribution. And we've seen in some of our other testing, I don't have the experiments in front of me right now, but there are some other experiments where we've tested longer copy, and even longer copy, if it's compelling, leads to greater conversions. Even if it messes up the user experience and user design by adding some more layers to get there, if you can really engage people in why their gift matters, it can be helpful.
You know, John, something that occurred to me as you asked that question, and I'm so glad you did, because I'm sure people watching this right now are asking the same thing, right? Like, why would we push the form up, below the fold, right? That nice direct mail term. Well, we did a benchmark study in 2024 of nonprofit giving on donation pages where we found the average conversion rate for a main donation page is 13%. Now, next after we look at that and we say that means 87% are failing, right? And when you stop and realize how people get to that page, it blows your mind because they're getting there because they clicked a button that said donate now, give now, make my gift, I want to support, some iteration of that. And so in our mind as marketers, they're signaling they're ready to give, they're ready to transact. When in reality, they're searching for reason to transact and give. And that's why I don't look at value proposition as friction. I look at value proposition as the reminder why the form, which is the real friction, is worth doing. Because right now on this page, when I look at it, I see a lot of cost and opportunity cost, both financially and in time, completing all those fields, but I don't see as much relevant value. And that's where, for me, Brian, the first thing I would do on that page is I'd ask myself, why does PBS 13 matter? Why do your donors care about it? What is it that's bringing them here? when you ask those questions and then get the answers, you're fueling the optimization you need in terms of the language that we would recommend testing here against this version. And the test might show you that it is too much language and it's too much friction, and then it's a decline. Or the test may show what CBN did with a lot of traffic, that additional clarity is giving them what they're looking for when they hit that Give Now button as to a reason to support.
And by default, these forms anchor to the form on mobile. Would you suggest disabling that as a test as well?
So what do you mean by disabling? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
So when you visit this page on mobile, by default, it anchors to the form, and that's something that's inbuilt in every action when you create a new page.
We would recommend testing it on mobile as well, because, and this is why, in that CBN, I actually ran that CBN example, over 78% of their web traffic, massive volume of web traffic, was on mobile devices. And all of that copy, when we were discussing it, the team internally was concerned on mobile would cause too much friction. But yet mobiles, where they saw the biggest increase in conversion from the longer text, was on mobile. And so if you excluded mobile from this test, you would, one, have a less probability of being able to actually validate, because you're probably not getting enough traffic to validate the experiment. And two, you're also excluding the biggest source of traffic from it, which is your greatest opportunity for learning.
That's helpful. Thank you.
We had a couple quick questions, Kyle, if I can jump to, that came in our chat. Yeah. We're going to hit these rapid fire here so that we can get these addressed. Starting with one asking, is more text leading to more conversion something that applies to advocacy forums or only giving forums? I actually tested this, Heidi, at the nonprofit that I worked at before joining Next After, where we tested longer versus shorter in all of our funnels. And 9 times out of 10, the longer led to greater conversion, because it wasn't length for length's sake. That's not what it was. But it was trying to clarify, why me, why now, why does it matter? And those questions are critical, whether it's a fundraising question like, do I donate? Or it's an advocacy question. Do I sign this petition? Do I raise my hand? So that's a great question. Someone else asked, oh, actually it was Heidi as well, how much do these things translate to forums that are primarily viewed by email versus website? Another great question. In our testing, we have tested traffic sources of these donation pages holistically. And we find that as a source of traffic, email has the highest conversion rate of any other channel. But what we find is that even in email funnels, we actually did this test once. I don't have it pulled up right now, but where we duplicated most of the fundraising email on the giving page against having a very short and sweet donation page like this for an email campaign. And the one that duplicated most of the copy from the preceding email actually led to greater donor conversion. Even though you would think they just read the reason in the email, they clicked give, surely they're ready to give, but they weren't. They needed that nudge and reminder, as Kyle said. So excellent question, Heidi, there. That's what we've seen there. And then one other question asking if we've seen a meaningful difference in performance between leading in a page with video or leading in a page with a static image. Fantastic question. There's not as many tests on this as I would like. So let's test it in your org is the short answer. The long answer is, when we've tested it, in general, we find that the video becomes a competing call to action to the action of giving on the page. So when a person decides to watch the video, they're actually not deciding to donate. And we've seen this in lower donor conversion rates for video pages versus static image pages. But again, test it yourself and let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brian, John, any last minute questions here for this page as we take a final look here?
Just to say, if you care about public media, please call your senators.
Thank you so much, guys. Artie, let's take a look at our next organization and our next webpage.
I am so excited about this one. And joining us today, we have Tracy. Tracy, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our viewers today, share a little bit about your organization, what you do, and then most specifically about this page we're going to be reviewing together.
Great. Thanks, Artie. Great to be here. Yeah, my name is Tracy Klicka, and I am Director of Development at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. We've been in existence for over 40 years, and our primary mission is to advocate for homeschooling, and we do that both through legislative efforts, through we're a membership association. So we've been working since we started in 1983 to make homeschooling legal in all 50 states, to make it freer for parents to be able to homeschool, to be there for them when they're discriminated against. And then we also support families who are homeschooling through financially difficult times. So we provide grants to low-income families as well. And so I've been with the organization since 2011 doing that. And but our primary focus is on homeschool freedom for families.
That's wonderful, Tracy. And this page that we're looking at right now on the screen, can you describe where this page is, how people get here?
Yeah, so this was a special donate page. It's not a general donate page, but the end of 2024 through March of this year, March is when our fiscal year ends, end of March, we've been talking about threats to homeschool freedom. And this has been primarily this year, 2025, through legislation that's been introduced in several state legislatures. Some are just horrific, and a huge step back. Were they to pass, it would be like a huge step back for families, like making it a criminal offense to miss a deadline to turn in paperwork, those kinds of things. And so we created this donate page to take us through an entire season of multi-communications via email that would land on this particular page. So the value proposition on the page is very much in sync with a lot of the messaging that we communicated to members and donors and those outside, social media, different places.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you for that, Tracy. And I know you know this, but for the benefit of those joining us today, I actually worked at HSLDA out of college for about 6 months. So it's fun seeing this page and kind of coming full circle, if you will, and getting to look at this. So Tracy, thank you for joining us. Kyle and I both love getting to do this and help nonprofits like you succeed. And I just want to commend you for the courage it takes to do this. I know, having worked in the trench, how many hours of blood, sweat, and tears go into making a campaign like this. And it's kind of like your child, right? And now you're asking the wider world to take a look at it and pick it apart and tell you how you can make it better. And so that takes courage. That takes a hunger for growth and optimization that I just love and respect. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to start with a few things that Kyle and I, as we looked at this, we really liked. And then we're going to jump into some areas we see as opportunities to optimize this. And once again, if you're just joining this live web stream, please jump in the chat, put your own questions here for us to tackle, because I know as we're looking at this page, it's probably going to make you think of some of your campaign donation pages as well. So a couple things I really like. I love how clean the picture is. And the clean the design is for this page. So as Kyle said earlier with the example from our public broadcasting station, there aren't any other competing CTAs going on here. I love that. As I scroll down, I love that we have very big, easy, clickable buttons. I love that just visually, this form does not look like it's going to take me all day to complete. I think we all know those forms that you look at and part of your soul dies because you're like, am I going to be here for the next 6 minutes just answering these questions? This feels a lot easier to tackle. And I also love that you've got 100% secure badge right here. You've got your Charity Navigator badge, your ECFA badge. We once had, way in the early days of Winston and our testing library, we had a test from an organization that literally created their own logo for the test. And it just was like a security logo made from scratch. And we tested it on the donation page and it increased conversion just by offering that little visual indicator. So these are great things to have. One other thing that I really like is you tell me in the headline, my gift, right? So you're starting with the donor as the focus. Now, with that being said, as I read through this value proposition, and it makes sense to some degree, Tracy, now knowing where this is in the funnel, that this was in an email campaign about the benefits of homeschooling. The value proposition of this page is all really, and for lack of a better term, making the case that homeschooling is good. Homeschooling is valuable. The challenge that I see in that is, I would assume that if someone signed up for that email campaign, if someone's wanting to partner with HSLDA, knowing what I did at the time working with your donors, and I suspect it's probably the case now, that the majority of these donors are personally connected to homeschooling families in some way. Even if they themselves don't homeschool, they have a friend or family member that is. And as a result, as I read this value proposition, I'm not sure that the prevailing question in their mind is, why should I support homeschooling? They already support homeschooling. I think the prevailing question in their mind is, why should I give to Homeschool Legal Defense Association as someone who supports homeschooling? And you see, that's a nuanced difference, right? Because I think you make a strong case in this value proposition of what homeschooling is positively linked to. But I don't know that that's actually making the case as to why I should give right now, what tangibly my gift will do. Because when I look at the CTA on the form, and this is another thing I'll just make as a side note here for optimization. On desktop, you're using a dual column design. We have seen in our testing on donation pages that dual column designs can actually play tricks with our reading left to right eyes, right, that most people are doing. And so you're not actually sufficiently reading the reason to give before you're being asked to give. So we're jumping in prematurely with the ask. So that's a simple test you could do, is just making this single column. Because right now, as I was reading it, I started here and then suddenly I see this. But even just looking at this CTA, yes, I want to defend homeschool freedom. You tell me my gift allows us, being HSLDA, to advocate for homeschool freedom, but I don't get any practical implications of what that advocacy is. What are you saying? What are you doing with my money? What's the tangible impact? What are the stories of success? And you have the space here to do that. You had beautiful bullet points here. I would love to see a test where these bullet points are all describing what 100% of your gift goes towards. Thinking of that example Kyle shared from CBN, right? They said 100% of your gift will do these things. We see Charity Water use a similar approach. Donors want to know what my gift is going to accomplish tangibly to make the world a better place. So I have a few other tactical things that we can show you in a moment. But before I jump in those, I'm just curious, Tracy, we'd love to hear your thoughts about these suggestions.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is the kind of feedback that I was hoping to get, because we've been listening to Next After. We've been following you guys for so many years. And so you guys are so respected in the industry. And you're absolutely right. I specifically submitted this page because I was hoping that you would kind of give that kind of confirmation and feedback, because we have other donate pages that are like our general kind of freedom advocacy page or general compassion program page, that get into more of the details. In this particular case, we were reaching way outside of our normal bubble. So we were hitting a lot of people who were, not donors, a lot of people who've never given before. And so we took a little more time to be like advocates for homeschooling, but it came at the cost of not giving enough information on the actual value proposition, like how your money's actually going to be used more specifically. So thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And again, I get that, Tracy. I remember at the nonprofits I worked at, that was always a challenge, because you got to figure out, how do we educate, right? How do we convey that? How do we recognize where in the donor journey they are? And the thing that I want to encourage you with is never be afraid of explaining a little bit too much. In my testing, I find that oftentimes we don't fail in our conversion because we over-explained. We failed because we under-explained. And it's funny because I shop on Amazon all the time. I'm sure a lot of our viewers are today shopping on Amazon probably. And if you go to Amazon, yeah, they have a one-click buy now. But have you noticed how large their landing pages are? How many areas of supporting content there is on every product page? And Amazon didn't get to that design by accident. They're doing thousands of A/B tests every year to get there. So let's look at a couple tactical suggestions from our library. And then Tracy, we've got some great questions submitted from our listeners that Cal and I will tackle as well. So the first tactical thing I wanted to point out is a test that we ran with CaringBridge. Now, CaringBridge is not like HSLDA in the sense that they're not advocating in legislatures or anything like that, but they are very member driven, right? They're there to serve their members, people who create websites for free to let loved ones know what's going on in their health journey. And on their main giving page, they had this great page where it had a story about success and what CaringBridge meant for a particular family. And this made me think of HSLDA because you talk about homeschool families at least 3 or 4 times in that copy. And you have the opportunity to put a face, a name, and a story to that approach. And so that's what CaringBridge did. Hi, my name is Kelly. And they told a story. Now, in this case, it was not just someone who's been benefited, but someone who works at CaringBridge. But they personified it and they made it something where you felt like you were hearing a personal appeal from Kelly. Now, CaringBridge is a large organization, lots of donor conversion already. So tests can have a really big impact. But when they ran this, I just want to highlight, they had a 100% increase in revenue at a 95% level of confidence. And so when I look at these pictures, someone made the comment in chat. They said the images look a little blurry. And I think they do, depending on the screen share and the size and the device. But for me, it's a bigger question. Are these images real? Because this was something in the CBN example that came up. That image was not a stock photo. That was an actual child being served through the humanitarian work of CBN. The problem is, I guarantee 90% of you didn't assume that when you looked at it. Because we're all trained to know that iStock has a lot of beautiful stock images that get thrown in. And that's before we get into AI image generation, friends. And that's already taking over, right? And so these images are opportunities to put real families and say it in the copy, right? Explain to the donor so they see where their gift is going. I just see that with this CaringBridge as an opportunity tactically to test an angle that might generate more motivated giving and higher average gifts.
And Maggie had a great question related to those images in the comments here that I think would be good to address. She asked, is it better to have pictures on your donation page or just text and a logo? Previously, the previous page we looked at was very clean. There was an image on it, but it was, it was not the highlight. Here, there's some great captivating photos. And I will say from my experience in testing using images on a page, it's very dependent on 2 things. One, we don't know your audience. Maybe they're going to like pictures and maybe they're not going to. So already you should test it on whether it's going to work or not. And then second thing you should test is exactly what Artie was just saying, is contextualizing those to reinforce the value proposition. Mm-hmm. It can be a great looking image. It can be a cute family, and it can draw you in that way. So I'm seeing a lot of smiling faces in these photos, and that's great because it causes an empathetic reaction for me. Like I'm already smiling. I'm already happy reading through this copy here. But contextualizing it, why is this family featured? Why is this person on the page? Why is this image relevant to what I'm reading? If you give a little bit of context, it can really drive home the message that you have on your page.
Absolutely. No, Kyle, you are so right on that. I remember at a nonprofit I did where we included an image in email, and we'd actually tested, Tracy, images in email versus not, and generally images in email tanked conversion, but they were just generic images. And in this particular image, we had a letter written to donors by a mother who was supported through their gifts. And her child was literally alive that day because of the support of donors giving to this organization. So in the email written in her voice from the mom, we're able to say, here's a picture of my son. I wanted you to have it because your support ensured he's alive today. That image, best image we ever had. And it makes sense, right? Because you just get goosebumps even thinking about it. So something for you, something to look at as you're looking at the images here. Another tactical thing that I wanted to highlight, when I go back to this page, it defaults to a $100 gift. Now I'll be the first to say I'm hungry for $100 first gift donors. Let's get it. That's great. But I'll also be the first to say in our testing, we find that that can be a bit of a stretch, especially as people are trying to test the waters with their first gift and see, is this a one-off, I'm just going to donate to you now, or is this something that I'm going to partner with you into the future? And most people don't want to make that test with a $100 contribution. So in this example from Dallas Theological Seminary, they had a default array at 100, which is the same amount that you have on yours. So I wanted to point that out. And all they changed was changing it to $50. That's it. What was the result? Well, they improved donor conversion by 26% at a 96% level of confidence. Now, I'm sure someone's going to ask, well, what about the revenue, right? You are going to be subtracting some average gifts. And they did see a hit on average gift by suggesting 50%. But by getting 26% more donors in the door and acquiring those supporters and that lifetime ability to support, the long-term and immediate impact of that is still more revenue, even if it's a lower revenue per donor. And that's what I want to highlight for you as an opportunity with HSLDA. You can always get a donor to give $10 more than they did for their first gift, but it's a lot harder to get their first gift. So what can we do to lower those barriers of entry and show that a gift matters, even if it's $50 instead of $100? One other tactic, and I want to highlight this because when we think of traffic volume, and I think there's a question, Kyle, we'll have to address today about traffic volume. Mm-hmm. But when you think of traffic volume, in fact, there it is. We're going to be talking about your question here in a moment, Josh. When we think about traffic volume, there are very few organizations and nonprofits that have the traffic volume and global scale and reach as Save the Children. Very large organization. We've been honored for several years now to partner with them in testing. And they were testing a simple tactic to improve perceived security on their page. So here's their standard page and control form. I want you to see that it shows that it is secure. They said that your information is secure in the form, but they wanted to highlight how secure it was. So this is what they did. In this yellow box, which the yellow box is just there visually to emphasize, you didn't see a yellow box on the page. Under the button to give, they said, we take data and privacy seriously. Your payment information is secure and will be used only to process your gift. Now, I want to stress, they didn't change anything in the security of the page. They didn't need to. It was already secure. They're just changing the emphasis on that security for the user. And it's hard for us to take a screenshot, unfortunately, that shows the animation. But if you're on their Save the Children forums, this lock icon is opening and locking. So you actually see it securely locking. I once showed this and someone said, well, that doesn't look secure. It's unlocked. And I mean, that would be a very fair point. So it was a locking lock here. And when I look at your page, you say 100% secure here. But what would happen if you had a simple little animation running and knowing your system, that is something that can be tested and added, especially through tools like Visual Website Optimizer, VWO, that we work with. And you can then validate, does simply saying that help? Oh, and in case you were wondering how much it helped Save the Children, it was an 11% increase at 96% level of confidence. And when you factor that at the scale that Save the Children operates, this was a significant learning and win that will literally, tangibly transform the lives of tens of thousands of more children just because they added a silly little animated lock and privacy statement on the page. And that's the power of optimization. It isn't just about finding green arrows. It's about the families that you're now able to support because you just tweaked the process you were using to ask for that gift. Kyle, why don't we bring up some of those questions that came up, starting with that traffic one?
Yeah, which I think is a really important question because I know from my personal experience in the nonprofit world, I was leading a very small organization and having 10,000 visitors to all of our web pages on our website would have taken months. So I have a lot of empathy for this question. Is it even worth testing when you don't have the traffic to make a statistically valid result out of your test? Yes, emphatic yes. Please test. You don't know what's going to work without testing. And even if you don't get to that 95% level of confidence, if you run it through a statistic validator, you're going to learn what resonates with your audience. You're going to get to know your donors in a way that you probably don't right now. And you're going to find new people to bring into your fold, to join your mission, who are excited about it through testing. It could be through testing some of the things that we just brought up. Maybe it's a animated GIF of a padlock. Maybe it's a different photo on your webpage. Maybe it's adding a bunch of value proposition copy to an email before you include that link. There's a lot of different things to test. We have a library of over 8,000 and close to 9,000 experiments right now for some inspiration. But it is absolutely worth testing, even if you don't get that green box of this is a valid result, because it's going to be valid for you. It's going to point you in the right direction of what is going to work to increase your engagement with your donors.
And something else, Kyle, that I love is we can boost the traffic to an experiment. One of my favorite things to do is to test a concept in another channel where we are getting the traffic we need. So for example, Tracy, let's say we're trying to figure out what value proposition will resonate the most with potential donors. Test the competing value propositions in the copy of your Facebook ad, because now you're getting a lot of impressions, and then measure the clicks on those competing value propositions. Yes, you may not be able to get the downstream donor data that you're wanting, but you are seeing upstream that this is going to motivate with this value proposition in a better way. And now you're able to validate so that you can think outside the box. Other things you can do is if you're trying to test a giving page and your main giving page doesn't have a lot of traffic, test again a page getting traffic from Facebook or from a channel that you're putting some ad dollars behind. That can be another way to get to it. The final piece of advice I'm going to give you is, even after all of that, you may, as Kyle said, find out you just can't validate a test. Does that mean your hands are tied? Absolutely not. That's why Winston Knows, our library of experiments, is published online. So you can see these experiments. And if you're at an organization that's too small to validate, you can use the data from larger organizations to inform what your control experience looks like. And that's something that I discovered the nonprofits I worked at was when we weren't able to actually run a test, we were able to get better results because we were now using as our standard practice, not some vague best practice out in the industry, but actually what was proven to work for an organization whose donors are a lot like ours. And so that's something else I want to remind you all is don't be afraid to look at some of these tests and just make an optimization choice if you're limited in your ability to test.
Absolutely. Hey, if you have questions, if you're still on the live stream with us, you have more questions that you want us to address about anything that we brought up today, please drop it in the chat. We have a little bit of time here and we'd love to get to it. As we wait for some more of those questions to come in, I want to jump to another one from Josh here, talking about non-cash assets. His question said, how have you seen that optimizing a page for those additional giving channels, aside from just giving with your credit card, are those going to distract from giving in the traditional way? Or do those extra CTAs of giving with stocks or crypto or those other kind of things, do those cause too much friction or too much distraction from that page? Artie, what do you think about that?
I think that's a great question, Kyle. It's actually one of the, I keep mentioning this, but it was one of the first things we tested at a nonprofit I worked at. Because we were on a giving platform that was very nice and UI was great to use. And one of the defaults was it offered the opportunity for non-cash gifts. And I remember looking at this when I first started there, and it was literally like stock or asset. Like I could literally arrange through the portal how to give my car and donate my car. And I remember we had a conversation. We're like, does anyone do this? And in the entire history of been running on the website, one person did it. And it was the director of fundraising for the nonprofit who donated their old car. No one else had done it. And this is where I look at, again, what do I know about the audience that's coming to this page? most non-donors or first-time donors or even broad-based donors are probably not in the place when they hit their general donate button to do a stock wire transfer to you. So stopping with that can raise questions I don't want them asking themselves. Like, wait, do I want to do that? Do I need to do that? Is that what they expect of me? Right? And it can add actual mental friction to the process. But that doesn't mean I don't want to have a place on my website for that. And that's what we did at the nonprofit I worked at. We created a page simply called Other Ways to Give. So our main donation page was all about making that digital online gift. And then at the bottom was a little link, very small print. I would like to find other ways to support you or partner with you. And if you clicked that, it would load another page that had all those options. And that was a way we got around adding too many CTAs, if you will, calls to action on one page. Another thing that I love to do is I love to make questions about other forms of support part of my new donor welcome series. So this is a great email to add to that series, onboarding a new donor and saying, Tracy, you just recently made your first gift to Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and I just couldn't be more blessed by that support. Thank you. I wanted to reach out a minute to let you know about some of the ways you may not know you can partner with us to secure homeschooling rights for families around the world. And then you can introduce those in a conversational way that I've seen in data. It's actually stronger anyway, because it's not a passive CTA on a website. It's an active CTA given from a real person to a real person via email.
One other place that you could potentially test those additional ways to give outside of a new donor welcome series, right? I think that's the first place that I would start to already. Also think about when people are most likely to give those additional things, and it's calendar year end. It's right at the end of the year. They're looking to make those donations. Oftentimes that's when they're going to want to donate maybe some stock or their car, as they're thinking about the potential tax write-offs and all that kind of stuff. So that could be in an email to your existing donor file during the month of December. Maybe it's a PS. You give all your value proposition. Here's why your gift is important at the end of the year. Oh, PS. If you want to contribute to this and you have other ways that you'd like to contribute to this, aside from just typing in your card information, here's some ways that you can get involved. Then take them to that dedicated web page, like Artie was saying. Just another time that would be worth testing.
And there's several questions that have come up in the chat asking about our learning library that we have on our website. And so I'm just going to open that up here because I think that would be great to pull up here. So let me see if I can get this to pop up. One moment. We're just going to live op here. This is on our website. It's simply nextafter.com/all-experiments. You're going to get a great pop-up about the Nonprofit Innovation Optimization Summit, NEO Summit. If you don't have plans to join us, be sure to check that out. Best event that I ever attended when I was working at nonprofits, and it's still my favorite event now. But going on to this part of our website, you will see experiments like what we just walked through. And there's no paywall. There's nothing you need to do to get them. This is just real insights from real fundraisers just like you who are testing these concepts every single day. And what I love is you can filter by type. So here you have a whole bunch of organizations. So like if I just want to see Save the Children experiments, I can filter to Save the Children and see experiments from Save the Children. If I wanted to filter by topic, so advertising, display ads, donation pages, newsletter, I can filter by topic. I can also filter by whether or not they're valid or invalid, right? Maybe you just want to see the wins. Though I will caution you, some of my favorite learnings came from the losses, not the wins. So I would look at all, but just pro tip there. And you can even sort by most recent, highest lift, etc. And so this allows you, so I'll take this DTS example. This allows you to see the summary of an experiment as well as the images of the experiment and the key learnings. And you're able to take that and then use that internally at your organization. This, when I was working at those 3 nonprofits, was one of my favorite resources because we were, probably like many of you, understaffed, always running from place to place, wearing 5 different hats in every single role. and lacking what we felt were the resources to really do the things that the big Save the Children's of the world were doing. And so I turned here and I realized that I could learn from their learnings and mistakes and apply those at my nonprofit that had a fraction of the budget. So if you've never been to this page, I encourage you to go to it, bookmark it, and come back to it frequently, because you'll never walk away without a good, tangible, practical test that you could run.
Absolutely. And just revisiting that question we talked about earlier of, is it even worth testing if I don't have the traffic that a lot of these do? This is a great place to start. You can get inspired. You can also just straight up like, hey, here's a tactic. Use that on my site. Use that with my email. Like, this is a perfect place for inspiration to see what's working for larger organizations that could apply to my own. Find an organization that is in a similar vertical, serving a similar audience, doing a similar thing, and use some of these learnings, because we want to unlock generosity for everyone, for the larger organizations who can validate these huge experiments with a lot of traffic, and for the organizations that, like Artie and I served with, that were smaller, that we would never hope to have that many visitors on our webpage. This is a great place to start your testing journey and figure out what resonates with your donors.
Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad to be able to look at what you're doing there. And we can't wait to hear what you find out as you run these tests in your next campaign.
Thank you, Artie. Thank you, Kyle. It's been great being here. Thanks for all your helpful advice.
Absolutely. Well, friends, as this time of live website optimization comes to a close, we just want to take a moment to thank you for joining us here. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was also inspirational. And I'm hoping at least a couple of you watching today are eager to jump in with us so we can live optimize your website in the future. So if you like this approach and you want to take part in it, we're going to put up on the screen here how you can join this and submit your have a great weekend, friends. We're really excited that you were here, and I hope we'll see you next time.